My name is Victoria Anderson. I was 32 years old the night my brother slapped me in front of 200 people and made the biggest mistake of his life. The sound cracked across the ballroom before the string quartet even finished its song. 1 second, I was standing near the head table in a simple black gown, holding the invitation I had almost thrown away. The next, my cheek was burning. My father's birthday guests were frozen with champagne glasses in their hands, and my brother was pointing at me like I was a stain on the marble floor. "You don't belong here," he yelled, loud enough for every donor, judge, banker, and politician in the room to hear. Nobody moved. Nobody defended me. My father sat beneath a gold banner celebrating his 70th birthday, staring at me like my humiliation was an unfortunate interruption to his perfect night. My mother looked down. My brother smiled like he had finally erased me from the family portrait for good. For years, they had treated me like the daughter who failed, the single mother who embarrassed them, the woman who walked away with nothing. And for years, I let them believe that was the whole story. I did not raise my hand back. I did not cry. I simply tasted blood on the inside of my lip and looked toward the governor's table. That was when the governor stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor, sharp as a warning. She looked around the room and said, "You people really don't know who she is?" Silence swallowed everything. My brother went pale when she added, "She's the one who—" Before I tell you what he said, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? And what's the weather like, where you are? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The governor did not finish her sentence right away, and that pause was worse than a shout. My brother Matthew had always understood money, image, and control, but he had never understood silence. Silence made him panic. He looked at the governor as if she had broken some rule by standing for me. Then he looked at me, still expecting shame to pull my eyes to the floor. It didn't. I had lived through real fear before. I had sat in a hospital hallway with my daughter Sophie sleeping across my lap while a nurse asked if I had anyone to call. I had signed lease papers for a studio apartment with my last $76 in my bank account. I had learned how to smile through job interviews after my own family told half the city I was unstable, irresponsible, and impossible to trust. A slap at a birthday gala could hurt my face, but it could not reach the part of me they had already tried and failed to destroy. The governor finally spoke again, measured and cold. She is Victoria Anderson, the woman whose work kept 3 public housing projects from collapsing under fraud, negligence, and political pressure. She is also the woman whose anonymous legal trust saved this very foundation from being shut down last year. A wave of whispers moved through the ballroom. My father's hand tightened around his napkin. My mother lifted her head for the first time. Matthew laughed once, but it came out thin. "That's absurd," he said. "She paints murals in community centers and begs important people for attention. Don't turn her into some hero because you feel sorry for her." The governor's expression did not change. "I don't feel sorry for her. I trust her." That sentence landed harder than the slap. Matthew had spent years building his role as the golden son, the polished heir, the man who carried our family name with clean cufflinks and rehearsed humility. He spoke at charity luncheons about duty. He posed beside ribbon cuttings for buildings he never visited again. He called himself a protector of legacy, but he had no idea I had been protecting the family legacy from him. I turned toward my father. "Did you invite me tonight?" I asked quietly. "Or did someone else add my name to the guest list after they realized I needed to be in the room?" He did not answer, and that told me enough. The invitation had arrived on thick cream paper with my full name, not Vicky, not dear daughter, not any of the names my family used when they wanted to shrink me. It had said, Victoria Anderson, special guest. I knew then that it had not come from my father's hand. Matthew stepped closer, lowering his voice as if the damage could still be contained. "Leave, before you embarrass yourself more." I looked at the red mark blooming across my cheek, reflected in the silver service behind him. "No," I said. "I already left once. That was the favor I gave this family. Tonight I'm staying." The governor turned toward the guests. Since this gala was advertised as a celebration of integrity, philanthropy, and public service, I think everyone deserves to know why Miss Anderson was asked to attend. My father pushed back his chair. "Governor, this is a family matter." "No," she replied. "Your son made it public when he struck her in front of the entire room." The ballroom went completely still. For the first time in my life, the silence was not working against me. It was waiting for me. Matthew's jaw clenched, but his eyes were no longer angry. They were calculating. He knew there were things I could say that would not sound like family drama once they were spoken aloud. They would sound like evidence. And evidence had always been the one language he could not bully into obedience. I reached into my clutch and felt the edge of a small silver flash drive. I had not come to ruin my father's birthday. I had come because the governor asked me to give the Anderson family one final chance to tell the truth privately before the investigation became public. But Matthew had raised his hand. He had turned a private reckoning into a public one. And when people choose an audience for your humiliation, sometimes they accidentally choose an audience for their own exposure. I should explain why Matthew hated me enough to slap me in a room full of cameras. It was not because I was poor, although he enjoyed saying that. It was not because I had a child before marriage, although he used that whenever he wanted our parents to look disappointed in me. It was because I knew what he had done, and he had spent 7 years making sure nobody believed me. When I was 25, I worked part-time in the Anderson Family Foundation's outreach office. I was not important there. I answered emails, organized grant photos, and drove to neighborhoods my brother only mentioned in speeches. I saw families move into temporary housing with mold behind fresh paint. I saw contractors paid twice for repairs that were never completed. I saw invoices with identical numbers and different company names. At first, I thought it was sloppy bookkeeping. Then I found my brother's initials on approval forms attached to projects he publicly claimed he had personally rescued. I took the files to my father. I still remember him sitting behind his desk, wearing the face he wore when employees disappointed him. He did not read past the first page. He asked me if I understood how dangerous accusations could be when made by someone emotional. Matthew arrived 10 minutes later, already prepared. He called me jealous. He said pregnancy had made me paranoid. He said I was angry because I would never be trusted with real responsibility. By dinner, the story had changed. I was no longer the daughter who found suspicious files. I was the unstable one who had tried to sabotage my brother out of bitterness. By the end of the week, I was removed from the foundation. By the end of the month, my father told me not to come home until I apologized. I left with 2 suitcases, a folder of copied documents, and Sophie moving under my ribs like a tiny heartbeat, reminding me I could not collapse. That was the part Matthew never understood. He thought exile would silence me. Instead, it gave me time. I studied nonprofit compliance at night. I worked at a legal aid office during the day. I painted murals on weekends because art was the only place my anger could breathe without poisoning me. I learned how grants were supposed to move, how shell vendors hid behind friendly names, how board members signed things they did not read, and how powerful families survived scandals by blaming the least protected person in the room. For years, I did not attack. I built. I built a small practice helping community organizations recover stolen funds. I built a reputation under my mother's maiden name so the Anderson name could not open doors or slam them shut. I built a file so complete that when the governor's office finally called me, they did not ask if I had suspicions. They asked if I was ready to testify. Back in the ballroom, Matthew did not know how much of his past was sitting inside my purse. He only knew the governor had said too much, and the guests were looking at him differently. That was all it took for his perfect mask to sweat at the edges. "This is a performance," he announced, spreading his hands toward the room. "My sister has always wanted attention. She appears after years of silence, and suddenly she is connected to the governor. Convenient." He smiled at my father, asking for rescue without saying it. "Dad, don't let them turn your birthday into a circus." My father looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something flicker across his face. Not love, not yet. Fear. He was beginning to understand that the daughter he dismissed had returned with more than hurt feelings. "Victoria," he said slowly, "what is going on?" I wanted to laugh, not because anything was funny, but because that question had arrived 7 years late. "What's going on, for?" I said. "Is that your foundation was used to steal from people who trusted our name. What's going on is that Matthew needed someone to blame if anyone noticed. And what's going on is that he chose me because he thought I was the easiest person in this family to break." My mother whispered my name. Matthew snapped, "Don't you dare." I looked at him. "You slapped me in public and told me I didn't belong here. Don't act surprised because I finally agree. I don't belong in the lie anymore." A photographer near the dessert table lowered his camera, unsure whether to keep recording. The governor did not stop him. That was when I realized the room was no longer a birthday party. It had become a witness stand. Matthew tried to recover by doing what he had always done best, turning pain into a question of manners. He straightened his tuxedo jacket, wiped his thumb across his lower lip, and gave the room a wounded smile. "I apologize," he said, though he did not look at me. "Emotions are high. My sister has a history of making dramatic claims, and I reacted badly. But this is not the place." That almost worked. A few guests shifted with relief, eager for someone to tell them this was just an ugly family scene and not the beginning of a scandal. My brother knew wealthy rooms. He knew people preferred discomfort to truth, if the discomfort came with dessert, and a silent auction. Then the governor opened the folder her aide had placed beside her plate. "Actually," she said, "this is exactly the place. Because your foundation invited donors tonight to pledge another $10 million to projects currently under review." The relief vanished. My father looked at Matthew. "Under review?" Matthew's eyes flashed. "Standard procedure." I took one step forward. My cheek still hurt, but the sting had become something useful. It kept me present. "There was nothing standard about the Rosebridge invoices," I said. A man from the bank table stiffened. He knew the name. "There was nothing standard about paying a demolition company that had been dissolved 6 months earlier. Nothing standard about emergency repair funds transferred to a consulting firm registered to Matthew's college roommate. Nothing standard about my signature appearing on an authorization form dated 3 days after I had already been locked out of the foundation system." My father rose halfway from his chair. My mother covered her mouth. Matthew's smile disappeared. "You forged copies," he said. "You always were good at making ugly things look convincing." That sentence was meant to cut two ways. He was mocking my art and accusing me at the same time. 7 years ago, it would have worked. I would have defended myself too quickly, sounded too desperate, made the room doubt me because pain can look like guilt when powerful people remain calm. But I was not 25 anymore. I turned to the governor. "May I?" She nodded. I removed the flash drive from my clutch and placed it on the center table between the birthday cake and the crystal champagne tower. Such a small thing to carry so many buried years. "Every document on that drive has already been submitted through council," I said. Tonight was supposed to be simple. The governor's office would give my father notice, freeze the new pledge campaign, and allow the board to cooperate quietly. I came because, despite everything, I thought he deserved to hear it from family before he heard it from reporters. My father flinched at the word reporters. Matthew saw it and pounced. Exactly. She wants a headline. She wants revenge because she couldn't handle being cut off. I felt the room inhale around that word. Revenge. It would have been easy to embrace it. Maybe part of me wanted to. But the truth was heavier and cleaner than revenge. No, I said. If I wanted revenge, I would have gone public years ago when Sophie and I were eating cereal for dinner in a room with no heat because every employer connected to this family had been warned not to hire me. If I wanted revenge, I would have released your emails the day I found them. If I wanted revenge, I would not have protected Dad's name by building a separate trust to repay the first group of tenants before they sued the foundation into the ground. My father stared at me. You did what? There it was, the first real crack in the family story. My mother leaned forward, eyes wet now, but I could not stop for her tears. Not yet. The Anderson name survived because the people harmed by Rosebridge received payment from a trust they thought came from an anonymous donor. That donor was me. I used settlement money from a compliance case I won under my professional name. I did it because those families needed repairs more than I needed satisfaction, and because, stupidly, I still thought one day you might want the truth more than your pride. For once, Matthew had no immediate answer. The governor looked at my father. Your daughter saved your foundation from the first lawsuit. Your son allowed donors to believe he had negotiated the solution. The ballroom shifted again, but this time the sound was not gossip. It was judgment forming in real time. My father's face had gone gray. He turned to Matthew. Is that true? Matthew's mouth opened, then closed. That was enough. Years of being called dramatic, unstable, jealous, and ungrateful collapsed into that one empty silence. But the night was not finished, because the Rosebridge files were only the beginning, and Matthew knew it. His hand moved toward the flash drive. I placed my palm over it first. Don't, I said softly. You already touched one thing tonight that did not belong to you. My brother's eyes changed after that. He stopped performing for the ballroom and started looking for exits. Not doors, exactly. Social exits, legal exits, emotional exits. He glanced at our father, then at the board members, then at the donors whose checks were supposed to close before midnight. Every calculation showed on his face. I had watched him calculate my worth since childhood. When I was 10, he told me my paintings were cute because nobody expected me to be useful. When I was 16, he told a scholarship committee I was too sensitive for pressure, then accepted their leadership award 2 weeks later. When I was 25, he calculated that a pregnant daughter with no husband and no money would be easier to blame than a son wearing an expensive watch and the family smile. But now the math had changed. You think this makes you noble? He hissed. You hid behind another name. You let everyone think you were nothing. No, I said. You needed everyone to think I was nothing. I just stopped correcting people who were committed to misunderstanding me. That line did what evidence alone could not. It reached people who had never read a grant audit in their lives. I saw it in the face of a woman near the orchestra, in the stiff shoulders of a judge who had once ignored me at a luncheon, in my mother's trembling hands. They understood what it meant to be erased by a story someone else controlled. Then my father stepped away from the head table. Victoria, he said, and my name sounded unfamiliar in his mouth, as if he had not spoken it with respect in years. Why didn't you come to me again? The question hurt more than the slap because it still made me responsible for his refusal to listen. I looked at him and forced myself not to soften the truth. I did. Twice. The first time you told me family loyalty meant silence. The second time your assistant returned my envelope unopened. After that, I chose Sophie. I chose rent. I chose work. I chose peace. My mother began to cry quietly. Matthew rolled his eyes, but no one followed him. That was new. He felt it too. He turned to our mother, trying the last door that might open for him. "Mom, please. You know her. She twists everything when she feels rejected." My mother looked at him, then at the red mark on my cheek. Something inside her seemed to break, but it was not the fragile kind of breaking. It was the kind that lets air into a room sealed for too long. "You hit your sister," she said, "in front of us." He stared as if she had betrayed him by naming what everyone had seen. "She provoked me." "No," my mother whispered. "We allowed you to believe she could be treated that way." The ballroom went quiet again, but this silence was different from the first. The first silence had judged me. This one was judging him. The governor's aide connected the flash drive to the projector at the side of the stage. A spreadsheet appeared behind the birthday cake, absurdly bright against the gold decorations. Rows of transfers, vendor names, dates, initials. My father's celebration had become a map of every secret Matthew had buried beneath polished speeches. The governor did not narrate every line. She did not need to. The evidence had its own voice. I watched Matthew's confidence drain as familiar names appeared. Northline Consulting, Harbor Civic Solutions, Ashford Development Support. Companies that sounded respectable until the ownership records unfolded beside them. One belonged to a college friend. One to a former assistant. One to a woman Matthew had introduced publicly as a policy advisor and privately paid with foundation money for an apartment downtown. A sound moved through the room, sharper now, less like gossip and more like disgust. My father gripped the back of a chair. "Matthew," he said, "tell me there is an explanation." Matthew's eyes darted to me, and for a moment I saw the boy he had once been, furious that his little sister had found his hiding place. "She set me up," he said. "She has always wanted my place." I almost smiled. Not because I was happy, but because he still did not understand. "Your place," I said. "That's what you thought this was about?" "I never wanted your chair at Dad's table. I wanted my name back." Then the governor clicked to the next slide. A scanned letter appeared. My letter. The one I had written 7 years earlier, begging my father to review the documents before cutting me off. Across the top was a handwritten note in Matthew's handwriting. "Do not let Dad see this. She's unstable. Handle quietly." My father sank back into his chair. My mother sobbed once, softly, and covered her mouth. Matthew stared at the screen like the past had turned around and recognized him. After the letter appeared, something strange happened. Nobody shouted. Nobody rushed to defend him. The guests who had once smiled at Matthew like he was the safest man in the room now looked at him as if he had become a liability. That was the punishment he feared most. Not prison, not scandal, not even losing money. He feared becoming unuseful to powerful people. My father stood slowly, and the room gave him the attention it had given him all night, but now his birthday crown looked heavy. "I built this family on reputation," he said. His voice cracked on the last word. "I thought reputation meant control. I thought if we kept the outside polished, the inside would eventually fix itself." He looked at me. I was wrong. Those 3 words were so small compared to what I had lost, but for years I had imagined them as impossible. Hearing them did not heal me instantly. It did not give Sophie back the birthdays my parents missed, or return the nights I cried silently in a bathroom so my daughter would not wake afraid. But it opened a door inside me that I had nailed shut for survival. Matthew stepped toward him. "Dad, don't do this here." My father turned, and for once he did not look like a man being managed by his son. "You don't get to choose the place anymore." The governor closed the folder. "The board will receive formal notice in the morning. The pledge campaign is suspended tonight. Funds connected to the reviewed projects will remain frozen pending cooperation." Several donors immediately began whispering to their assistants. Matthew heard the money leaving before anyone moved. Panic stripped the last elegance from his face. "You're going to believe her over me?" he demanded. My father looked at the screen, where my unread letter still glowed behind him. "No, I'm finally believing what I refused to read." That was when Matthew turned on me completely. "Are you satisfied?" he shouted. "You came here to destroy me at our father's birthday party. Congratulations, Victoria. You got your revenge." I felt every eye return to me, waiting to see if I would become the villain he needed me to be. I walked to the stage, not quickly, not dramatically, just steadily. The orchestra had stopped playing. The candles on the cake burned low. My cheek still throbbed. I picked up the microphone from the podium where my father had been scheduled to give a speech about family values. "I want to be very clear," I said. "I did not come here because I wanted applause. I came because people with less money than this room were harmed, and people with more power than them hoped they would stay quiet. I came because my daughter deserves to know that silence is not the price of being loved. And I came because I spent 7 years being punished for telling the truth in the wrong family." My voice shook once at the end, but it did not break. "Matthew is not being destroyed by me. He is being introduced to his own choices." No one clapped. I was grateful for that. Applause would have cheapened it. Instead, people listened. Really listened. I turned to my father. "You asked why I didn't come back. The answer is that every time I tried, this family asked me to make myself smaller. Tonight your son told me I didn't belong here, and maybe he was right. I don't belong in a room where love depends on usefulness. I don't belong at a table where truth is rude but cruelty is tolerated. I don't belong in a family that protects its image by sacrificing its daughters." My mother cried openly now. My father looked as if every sentence had aged him another year. Matthew stood alone beside the table, and for the first time in my life, nobody rushed to arrange the world around his comfort. The governor stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Victoria, the tenants from Rosebridge sent something when they learned you might speak tonight." Her aide handed me a small envelope. Inside were photographs, children standing in front of repaired apartments, an elderly man holding a handwritten sign that said, "Thank you, Miss V," a mother with twin boys smiling beside a new door painted blue. I pressed my fingers over the pictures and felt the revenge story inside me change shape. This was not revenge as destruction. This was revenge as proof. Proof that I had not disappeared. Proof that kindness done in secret could outlive lies told in public. Proof that my brother had spent years calling me worthless while people he ignored were speaking my name with gratitude. I looked at Matthew one last time. "You told me I didn't belong here," I said. "You were right about one thing. I belong with the people who know what my work is worth." I walked out before the birthday cake was cut. That is the part people always ask about. They want to know if I stayed to watch Matthew lose everything, if I watched the donors withdraw, if I watched my father remove him from the board, if I watched my mother finally choose me in front of everyone. The answer is no. I had spent too many years measuring my pain by their reactions. That night, I decided my healing did not require an audience. The governor walked beside me through the lobby, and the cold air outside touched my cheek like a clean hand. Behind us, the ballroom buzzed with consequences. Phone calls were being made. Lawyers were being summoned. A family portrait was cracking inside a gold frame. But outside, the city was quiet. "You did well," the governor said. I laughed softly because I did not feel well. I felt emptied out, like someone had opened every locked room in my chest and left the doors swinging. "I almost didn't come," I admitted. "I know," she said. "Courage often looks like arriving with shaking hands." I stood under the awning and checked my phone. There was a message from Sophie's babysitter. She fell asleep holding the blue paintbrush. That broke me more than the slap. I cried then, not loudly, not beautifully, just honestly. I cried for the young woman I had been, carrying boxes into a cheap apartment while telling herself exile was freedom. I cried for the daughter who wanted her father to believe her. I cried for every time I had swallowed my own defense because survival had more urgent demands than pride. Then I wiped my face because my daughter would ask about the mark on my cheek, and I would not lie to her. I would tell her someone made a cruel choice, and I made a brave one. 2 weeks later, the investigation became public. Matthew resigned from the foundation before the board could remove him, but the resignation did not save him. The accounts were frozen. Civil suits followed. A criminal inquiry opened after additional vendors came forward. His friends vanished with impressive speed. People who had once praised his leadership suddenly remembered they had always had concerns. That is how rooms like that protect themselves. They do not become moral overnight. They become careful. My father issued a public apology to the affected families. The first draft, I was told, mentioned mistakes were made. I refused to help soften it. The final version said, I failed to listen to the person who tried to warn me. That sentence mattered. Not enough to erase the past, but enough to stop insulting it. My mother came to Sophie's school art show 3 months later. She stood in the back holding flowers, nervous as a stranger. Sophie looked at me for permission before running to her. That look told me everything I needed to know about what my choices had built. My daughter trusted me to protect the shape of her world. So I did. I let my mother in slowly, with boundaries clear enough that nobody could pretend not to see them. My father asked to meet me for coffee. I waited 6 weeks before saying yes. When we finally sat across from each other, he looked smaller than I remembered. He did not ask for immediate forgiveness, which was wise, because I did not have it to give. Instead, he asked about Sophie. He asked about my work. He asked what Rosebridge needed next. For the first time, he asked questions without already owning the answers. As for Matthew, he sent one message through our mother. Tell Victoria she won. I deleted it. Winning was never the right word. Winning suggests a game, and what happened to me was not a game. It was a family system built on favoritism, silence, and fear of embarrassment. It was a brother who mistook protection for permission. It was a father who confused authority with wisdom. It was a mother who stayed quiet too long because quiet felt safer than conflict. And it was me, finally understanding that being rejected by a broken system can be the beginning of becoming whole. A year after the gala, I returned to Rosebridge for the opening of a community arts and legal resource center. No black tie gowns, no champagne towers, no gold banner with my father's name. Just folding chairs, kids with paint on their sleeves, tenants who hugged me like family, and a blue door at the entrance because Sophie insisted every safe place should have one. The governor attended, but she did not make the day about politics. My father came too. He stood near the back, quiet, watching me teach a little girl how to hold a brush without gripping it too tightly. Later, he said, I missed so much. I answered, yes, you did. I did not rescue him from that truth. Love does not require pretending the wound was smaller than it was. My mother helped Sophie hang paper stars from the windows. She cried when Sophie called her grandma without being prompted. Healing, I learned, is not one grand speech. It is 100 small moments where people choose not to repeat the old harm. Sometimes they fail. Sometimes you step back. Sometimes the apology is real, but the access still has to be earned. Matthew did not attend. I heard he moved out of the city while the cases continued. Maybe someday he will understand that the slap was not the moment he lost. He lost long before that, every time he chose image over integrity, every time he used family loyalty as a weapon, every time he mistook my silence for weakness. The slap only made the truth loud enough for everyone else to hear. People still ask me what the governor meant when she said, she's the one who... Here is the full sentence she later gave to a reporter. She's the one who protected the people this family claimed to serve. I keep that article folded in a drawer, not because I need the praise, but because Sophie likes to read it when she forgets that doing the right thing can feel lonely before it feels powerful. On the night of my father's birthday, my brother told me I did not belong there. He meant I did not belong among the powerful, the polished, the protected. He was right. I belonged somewhere better. I belonged beside my daughter, beside the families who trusted me, beside the truth I had carried even when it cost me everything. And if you have ever been humiliated by people who thought your silence meant defeat, remember this. Sometimes the moment they try to erase you becomes the moment everyone finally sees who you are.
Our team puts care into every script so each story can be dramatic, engaging, and useful in its message. This video is fictional and made only for educational and entertainment purposes. We hope it encourages viewers to protect their peace, recognize manipulation, and never feel guilty for walking away from disrespect.